The Endurance Asia podcast.
And always tell the truthful story if they ever ask. Stop the complaining cause things ain't that bad.
Nathan, welcome to the Endurance Asia podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, no, good to be here and good to be chatting.
Oh mate, I'm so it's not often you get to meet your heroes. I'm going to sound like a complete sycophant on this on this interview, but yeah, I've been like watching your career for years, mate, and yeah, as I think. So yeah, obviously we are like one of the top adventure racers, if not the top adventure racers in the world. But there was a quote from Bear Grylls on their recent Eco Challenge of saying you're the Michael Jordan of adventure racing, which I think that was probably to play up to the American audience, but I think it was bang on.
Yeah, I mean, I know what he's trying. I know what he's saying there. I mean, to be honest, I find that stuff a little bit embarrassing. You know, I think comparing adventure racing to any sort of mainstream sport is a little bit of a. I mean, you know, it's a little bit of a stretch. But I take his point in that I think he's just trying to tell the audience that, you know, these guys are actually the top of their sport, and what you're watching here is about as good as it'll get. And I mean, obviously he was mentioning me in that quote, but really I think that it's really our team that he's talking about, and the teams we're racing against. You know, like yeah, you know, it was just a legit race, I think, is what he was trying to say. So yeah, I wish I was. No, I wish. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll be a hell of a lot richer. You chose the wrong sport in that respect.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I wish I was the Michael Jordan of. Yeah, but anyway, yeah.
Oh no, I think you're being modest as well, mate. I mean, we could spend a couple of hours now talking about your racing CV, which spans the past like 20 years of podiums across the world. But what I'm really keen to cover is the Eco Challenge, obviously, which is just being aired on Amazon Prime, and so there's going to be a few spoiler alerts for those that haven't seen it already. But before we get into that, I suppose it would be good. We cover all like the whole breadth of endurance sports here on Endurance Asia, from mountain biking to ocean rowing to adventure racing, which is my personal, like probably my favorite sport, and then ultra running, etc. But obviously the Asia Pacific region as well. So one thing I'd be like interested to find out is like your sort of background of like racing across Asia. Have you I know that you've raced all around the world, but like what's been your exposure to races in Asia?
Oh, the first experience racing in Asia was quite a long time ago, and it was pretty mind-blowing actually. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this year right. If I'm wrong, it's only by a year. But in 1994. I actually traveled to China for a mountain biking multi-day kind of stage race competition. And we were racing in Sichuan in Chengdu province. And then we did some racing in Beijing. So to be in China in the kind of the early 90s, especially when I hadn't actually done that much traveling at that point in my life, that was a huge eye-opener, and I loved it. I just loved the contrast between, you know, China back then to what New Zealand was, the food, the culture, the scale of things. I mean, I remember being in Beijing and riding down the road on my bike with, you know, tens of thousands of other people on bikes. It's not like that now, but that was a really, really rich experience for me. And then,
because you were actually racing for New Zealand then, weren't you? Yeah, you were like you're like racing, yeah.
What happened was that I used to be sponsored by a mountain bike company called Diamondback, and at the time I was one of New Zealand's top cross country riders. I was ranked number 2, and we qualified for the Olympics. So we were racing, which were in 1996 at Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And what our sponsor did, Diamondback, they were a global mountain bike company who manufactured their bikes in China, like most companies do. And so what they said is they created this thing called the Diamondback World Team. And they basically went to all the distributors around the world and said, look, the inaugural mountain bike race is going to be on in Atlanta at 96 Olympics. Why don't we try and get as many riders on Diamondbacks there as possible? So what they did was they went all around the world and they got all the sponsored Diamondback riders and said, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to create a world team. We're going to bring all you guys to China, get to meet all the people that basically run the company. We'll have you guys racing against each other for some promo and just build a concept of this world team where we're actually going to work collaboratively to try and get as many Diamondback riders to that first race at the Olympics. And that was essentially it. That was what it was all about. So, yeah, well, I think it was probably about 30 or 40 international riders went there for this big race from all around the world, but all sponsored by the same bike company. So that's why we have that sort of China. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I remember like hearing the story from you about how you that because you were training for the Olympics in '96, right? And it would have been the first time that mountain biking was an official Olympic sport. Or in fact, they changed it, right? It was originally supposed to be a showcase, and then they they had it as an official discipline.
Yeah, that's right. So, and because of that, I didn't actually get to race in the end because the New Zealand cycling team was already full. So that was a bit of a shame.
Was that downhill or was that cross country, I guess?
Cross country.
Yeah.
I was cross country racer. Yeah. And then really since then, I think it's been adventure racing. And I would guess that my next races in Asia were the Mild 7 outdoor quests. So I raced in Borneo a couple of times in Malaysia. And
in Sabah or Sarawak?
Sabah, yeah. Couple of years in Sabah, and then that race stopped around that time. And then, like many Kiwi athletes, I did my time racing in China as part of the stage racing stuff they have there. I've done, I don't know, maybe 10 races in China, Wulong and up in Ordos and around the place, maybe more than 10. I can't remember, but they were always quite fun. But as you know, they're more stage races. And we did a race in Malaysia a couple of years ago, just an adventure race there, part of the World Series. So done a few over that way.
That's and because it's interesting, there was quite a long period of stage racing in China for the kind of multi-day, multi-discipline, but it wasn't like expedition style. But the sport's not really taken off domestically in China, has it? I mean, was it all international teams predominantly when you raced up there?
Yeah, mainly. Mainly internationals racing in China, but they were growing. Like I think, every year there was Chinese teams in the races, and they were getting better, as the racing went on. And from what I understand is the sport is growing there, but it's just probably, in relation to all the other things that are growing there. So it's probably hard to sort of gauge how big it's getting because the place is just so massive anyway. I think it is. I'm growing a bit. So.
Yeah, ultra running and trail running is definitely taken off on the mainland. Yeah. But there has been a couple of ARWS races in China as well, hasn't there? There was is it Atlas Mountains or and they had an initial race a few years back, and then they had an official one last year, but that got cancelled at the start line. You didn't go up for that, did you?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
Oh, mate.
So, I think
how frustrating was that?
It was kind of, for me or for our team, it was so bizarre that it wasn't really that frustrating because it was just kind of this incredible insight into how kura cultures are and how life in that part of the world is. I mean, basically some official somewhere in that area up in, I'm going to forget the name of the province now, but they pretty much just stopped the race and didn't really give any reasons. And what was amazing is that all the Chinese people and the Chinese organizers pretty much just accepted that as a perfectly normal thing to happen. Whereas, you know, if you did that in New Zealand or a lot of other places around the world, you know, if you're a race director and you just turned up to the start and said, "Hey, sorry, folks, the race is cancelled. Can't really tell you anymore." But yeah, that, you know, end of story. You know, and to expect everyone just to get up out of their chairs and go home, that wouldn't happen here. So yeah, it's kind of, for us, it was just kind of crazy that this was going on. I mean, it was disappointing because obviously we traveled a long way and we were really looking forward to getting out and doing the race because it is an incredible location. But I don't know, I think we were still blown away by just that cultural thing and human behavior.
Yeah, the sort of the sort of government, the kind of hierarchy of China. I mean, they just they don't sort of question or push back. And if a government official tells you it's not happening, they don't. Yeah, they're not going to protest it, are they? But yeah, it does look beautiful up in those Avaya Mountains. They had there was a documentary on the trial race that they did up there. It looked absolutely stunning up there.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
We've not had much luck in Asia because then obviously we had the world champs were supposed to be last year up in Sri Lanka, which obviously with the terrorist attacks there. So you travelled to Asia twice last year and didn't manage the race.
Oh, I didn't get to Sri Lanka.
Oh, you didn't? Of course, yeah. Of course, they did. They cancelled it before people travelled there. Of course, yeah.
We were going to go, and I was really looking forward to that, but no, we didn't get to go to that one. So
yeah, I think that they will definitely organise. Craig will organise a race back in Sri Lanka. I think they've planned an amazing route there. So yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah,
love to see it. But you did get to race last year, and obviously we'll get into the Eco Challenge. But that was almost a year ago, mate. So what have you been up to for the past year since Eco Challenge? Has been have you been keeping yourself busy?
Yes, it's gone really quick, like as time does. So after Eco Challenge, I think it was basically I probably only had a day after I finished the race in Fiji and I had to get back to New Zealand. So I didn't stay around for the award ceremony and the sort of post-race kind of buffets and things that you often enjoy, because I had to get back to an event that I organise, which is called the Spring Challenge, a women's adventure race here in New Zealand. So just literally a few days after Eco Challenge, I was race director in a big race here in New Zealand, where we had 480 teams doing a one-day adventure race. So I was pretty much straight into, yeah.
Is that teams of two?
Teams of three women.
Teams of three. You had 480 teams. You had 1,500 female racing in an adventure race. What was the sort of format of the race?
It is whitewater rafting, mountain biking, and hiking. But there can be multiple stages because we run a beginner, intermediate, and advanced course, which is, well, what we call the 3, 6, and 9 hour events, but they're projected winning times. So, it's essentially, the course is open for 18 hours for teams to finish whatever it is that they've taken on for that day. So it's been bigger some years. One year we actually took 600 teams. But it was a bit stressful, so we downsized it the last couple of years.
Mate, that's crazy. Because I mean, one of the things that I love about expedition adventure racing, the format of the teams is they have to be mixed teams. I mean, we talk a lot about diversity on the podcast and make sure that our guests are representative, but it's a real challenge actually finding women that actually want to go on a 5, 6, 8-day adventure race. I mean, there's always but I think it's so good that it enforces mixed teams. But it strikes me that in New Zealand there's not a problem finding women that are interested in adventure racing.
No, there's not. No, there's plenty of women here adventure racing, and because this event that I'm organising has been going for 14 years now, the whole level has come up. So I mean, New Zealand's always had good female adventure races, right throughout the history of the sport, but there's plenty of them now.
That's cool.
It's cool. Yeah,
that's really good, and it's good that you must be. Is your race the only sort of dedicated female adventure race in the world then?
Or is there a few of them now? I mean, we started our event 14 years ago, and then since then you get a few other events sort of pop up. I guess it's just the nature of having something that's successful. Other people will copy it and offer similar things, and that's happened a bit. And some of those events have sort of just come and gone, and some of them have stuck around. But I guess it'd be fair to say that ours is the sort of the premier one, just because it was the first one, and it's got that kind of legacy that people want to do that event. It moves to a new location every year within New Zealand, but people just want to do it. They don't really care where it is. They just want to have that experience. So it's pretty cool.
I'm sure it's not just the legacy, mate. I'm sure you run a pretty tight ship and make sure it's an amazing experience. That's why people keep on coming back, mate. Yeah, absolutely. Like, we've got a core staff team that are awesome and do an amazing job and put a ton of energy into the participants, and just to deliver an awesome race, basically. So yeah. And sorry, the name of the race again, Nathan? What's the name of the race?
Spring Challenge, because it's in springtime.
The Spring Challenge. Yep.
Spring Challenge, yeah.
And have you got one in the diary for this year as well?
Yeah, we're hoping. It's next month. It's always in September. So it's only about 5 weeks away. But I'm not sure if you heard, but New Zealand's just had a little spike or resurgence of COVID.
In Auckland, yeah.
So we're just praying at the moment, the whole country, that it gets contained and we can sort of get back to the sort of normality that we've been enjoying for a few months. So we'll see how things go. Yeah. Fingers
crossed. I mean, it's the race season across the world has been impacted, obviously, especially in the adventure racing. XPD's been pushed back to next year. Godzone's been pushed back to next year. Had you been planning to? I can imagine that you were obviously going to be doing Godzone, but had you been planning, or the team?
So,
Avaya?
That's right. Yeah. So after the Spring Challenge events that we ran last year, then I'm pretty lucky in that I can schedule my diary that I actually take school holidays completely off. So I'll usually basically dedicate sort of at least 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks, to just doing stuff with my kids over the summer. And we just go into the mountains and go climbing and go kiteboarding and go rafting and just do adventures back to back. So that's an awesome time. So we basically did that. And then I just started to get back into sort of work and the event stuff. And then, COVID hit New Zealand and we went into, I can't even remember now, I think it might have been 6 or 8 weeks of full lockdown, which was through autumn, which is actually pretty nice, to be honest. I quite enjoyed it. And then we came out of that, and it just feels like time's just gone by real quick. I was supposed to go and do the World Series race in Malaysia in June. And then in July, I was supposed to go up to Hokkaido and just be a consultant on the new race that they ran up there. I think they did run the event race up there in the end, but I obviously didn't get to go. And then we were going to do Godzone in November, but we were also going to race the World Champs in Paraguay in September. So, out of the sort of the 4 big events I was attending this year, they're all cancelled or postponed.
Have you still been keeping fit? Have you still been getting your training blocked in, or have you just decided to have a bit of a fallow year and let the body recover?
No, I don't ever sort of stop training, to be honest. And I think that's why I've managed to keep racing for as long as I have, because I don't really see it as training. Out from a big race like Eco Challenge, about 6 weeks out, I'll actually get organised and clear my diary and actually put in, what I consider to be specific training. But the rest of the time, I'm just out there doing stuff just for fun, just for physical and mental health, just because I just love to be out in nature. So, every day I'm usually out doing something.
What does a specific training block look like then? 6 weeks out going into Eco Challenge, what was your diary looking like, and how do you go about scheduling it all?
Yeah, well, I normally rearrange things so that my workload during that period is pretty minimal. I mean, I can't avoid all the work. I can't avoid not working in that period, but I do have a lot of flexibility if I'm organised. So, and what I mean by that is that I can work in the evenings, or I can get up early in the morning and work. A lot of it is just event planning. A lot of it's permits and concessions and managing databases and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of it is just office work, mapping, course setting. So, if I want to go for, say, like an 8-hour bike ride during the day, if I get up and work early for 3 or 4 hours, then I can go training for the day. And then if I work in the evenings, I can essentially do a normal day's work as well as whatever training I wanted to do. I guess.
And so you said like an 8-hour mountain bike ride, but would you like with training for multi sports, would you combine the multi sports into a day like a triathlete would for an Ironman or whatever, or would you just have specific training sessions for each discipline each day?
Yeah, so most cases, once I'm actually training, most of the time I would do 2 disciplines a day. So I would, and they don't necessarily need to be back to back. Sometimes they are. Like, for example, sometimes I might go, I actually live at a beach, so I can paddle up to one of our national parks in about an hour. So I can paddle up there with my running gear, leave my boat on the beach, go running, come back and paddle home. So sometimes I'll do those kind of sessions, or I might cycle somewhere with my running shoes, throw my bike in the trees and go running and then bike back home sort of thing. But often I won't. Often I'll just go out and do, maybe a 3 or 4 hour paddling session, come home, do some work, do some jobs around the house, have lunch, and then go out in the afternoon. I'm generally trying to hit about 30 hours a week in those training weeks.
Got you.
Generally speaking, but some weeks can be a lot bigger if I want to get out and do some really long key sessions. You might get up to about a 40-hour week, sometimes even 50 hours. It depends a bit on the race I'm training for and where I feel like I need the most improvement. So,
and I can imagine going into Eco Challenge, you knew it was going to be a big one. I mean, you knew the distance, 670 kilometers. You're gonna, and so on that, were you looking at the higher end 40 to 50 hour week training sessions? And also, were you training with your team at all? Like, I don't think the rest of your team are based in Nelson as well, right?
No, we're all spread out around the country. We sometimes train together, but very rarely. It's just more random. If you just happen to be in the same town as one of your teammates, you might hook up and go for a run or a paddle or something. Sophie and I have done quite a lot of training over the years because she used to live in Nelson, where I live, or in that region, and she's actually moving back here next month. So I imagine building up to a race, we'll be able to kind of get together for some of the longer kind of sessions that can just make them a little bit more interesting and fun. But most of the time we just do our own thing. And I think we're all busy, we've all got kids, and sometimes just that extra logistic of having to meet someone at a particular time to do something can just eat time up that you don't necessarily have. So
I'm laughing because it's not as if logistics is ever a real challenge for you, mate. But no, I get what you mean. Just getting everyone's diaries in time. So that kind of leads into then that you getting the team together for Eco Challenge, right? So first time it's been run since 2002. How many Eco Challenges have you done?
That was my third one. So I did New Zealand in 2001 and Fiji 2002. So
got you.
Yeah, I did have a couple of opportunities to race in some earlier Eco Challenges, but around that time there's a lot of racing going on, and they sort of clashed with each other. So so you had to sort of pick and choose your racing a little bit more around that time. And I sort of chose some other races. But to answer your question, I've done 3 Ecos now. Yeah,
and so it's interesting they brought the first time bringing it back, and obviously Mark Burnett was the original sort of founder of Eco Challenge that decided to resurrect the format. And I remember the invite going out, and what was your obviously you were straight away, we're definitely going to be getting back on board with this, or was there any deliberation about pulling a team together for it?
Oh, we were definitely quite keen. To be honest, we didn't actually jump at it when it first came out. At first, I was kind of like, I wasn't sure if it was true. I just didn't quite understand why they were coming back. And once it was sort of apparent that it was real, that they were coming back, I guess I was just a little bit unsure as to how much of it was race, or had they evolved it more towards some, I don't know, obstacle course race, or had they changed it more to some sort of TV show. So we actually didn't really do anything. We kind of, I guess it was my lead, but I kind of said to the team, look, the guys at Eco know who we are. They know enough about the sport. I mean, Kevin Hodder, the race director, he's got his finger on the pulse. I said, there's no point in us sort of going to too much effort applying for this race, because they'll know already if they want us there or not. And if they want us there, then they'll ask us to come. If they don't want us there, then, there's no point in applying. So we kind of just sat on our hands, really, and just waited to see what happened. And then, I got a phone call one day from Kevin and just said, hey, look, what's up? Are you guys racing or not? And I just said to him, well, is it a real race? What's the deal? And he goes, absolutely. And I was like, cool, okay. Well, sounds good. Let's do it. So, yeah.
And when you say you weren't sure whether it was or what their reasoning behind it, what were you sort of thinking that it might, it wouldn't have the same essence of the original Eco Challenge? It might just be, what was your thinking?
Yeah, I guess I just sort of figured, I mean, at the time I didn't really know, but what was sort of going on in my head is that why after 17 years would you just bring back the same event? I guess maybe I was just a bit too skeptical. I thought there's got to be some twist or
hidden agenda behind it.
Yeah, maybe team members going to get voted off as the race goes on, or I don't know. I just thought, surely there's got to be a modern kind of twist to it all.
I had a feeling with like Bear Grylls involved, you'd be like forced to like drink your own piss, or like eating some dodgy dodgy insects, but it wasn't that way, right? It was a classic sort of expedition adventure race format. It was the legit format, right? And so then it started putting the team together once they called you, and Sophie, you reached back out to you'd raced with many years in the past, but she sort of had a few years out.
Yeah, so Sophie, she was in the team, obviously. Well, she is the team in many ways, and she was supposed to race with us. Well, the team was supposed to race the World Champs in Australia in 2016, and then she pulled out of that because she got pregnant with her first child. And then
that's the Townsville one, wasn't it?
Yeah, Shoalhaven.
Shoalhaven,
yeah. So we got Joe, a friend of ours, to take Sophie's place that year, and then the following year, the World Champs were in Wyoming, and I didn't race that year myself, and then Sophie was kind of busy with her daughter, so she couldn't race. And then the following year was Reunion Island, and Sophie was actually planning to race that race as well, but she actually got pregnant again with another child, so she didn't race that race, and that was fine. Like, we were happy for her to have a family, that was awesome. But I guess her spot in the team was always kind of reserved. And then so Joe, who had raced with the team a couple of years, essentially just subbing in for Sophie, she broke her ankle just before Reunion Island. So that's where we got another friend of ours, Fleur Pawsey, to race Reunion with us. And then last year in Sri Lanka, Worlds were in Sri Lanka, and Sophie was supposed to be back in the team for that because her kids are old enough now. So I guess in terms of reforming the team, it sort of feels to me like the core structure of the team didn't change. It's just that Sophie was kind of juggling, trying to do some racing and fit in starting a family around it. So we're just lucky that Eco Challenge happened. Yeah.
her second born was just 9 months old when you raced, right? So yeah, well, I mean, that's just amazing, like how quickly she got back to race fitness. And I mean, when you've been racing for that many years, but just so inspirational for new mums actually to realize that they can how quickly they can get back to match fitness.
Yeah, well, she actually squeezed in a coast to coast in between her two children as well.
Did she?
And very nearly won that. Like she got second. She was first New Zealander.
Wow.
And that was on very minimal training. So yeah, no, she's a pretty talented athlete.
And the rest of your team, you say you say like the teams around her almost. I think the one sort of core to any successful expedition adventure racing or any adventure racing or orienteering team is your nav guy, right? And you've literally got the best in the business.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got the sort of the freakish navigator, Chris Forne. Yeah, we're very lucky in our team. I mean, we all three of us, Chris, Stu, and I are strong navigators, and any one of us could navigate our way through, these races. But Chris is another level when it comes to his accuracy. But what makes Chris exceptional is the speed that he can navigate at. It's just phenomenal. There's just the pace that he can go through a course, just by glancing at the map, and sometimes old maps with very little detail. He just sees things in a map that most people won't see, or if they do see that much detail, it'll take them a lot longer to interpret it. So yeah, Chris is a huge reason why our team does so well.
Yeah, that's pretty unique to have three people that could all be the primary navigator in a team, in an adventure racing team. And so would you be because you as the captain of the team, would Stu be the co-pilot, and then
yeah.
And then who's overall responsible for logistics? Because I mean, with these kind of adventure races, the sort of making sure that everything's in order, the logistics and everything is probably just as not just as important now, but it's key in terms, if you're looking at sort of time saving, is really important. Who takes up that mantle?
Oh, that would definitely be me. I guess just as a person, logistics is actually a big part of my job. So, I'm sort of managing, with the events and stuff. I mean, that's what I've been working on today, creating an event with logistics that are going to involve 480 teams. So going to a race where I only have to manage one team is pretty easy by comparison. So it's just natural that I step into that role. And I do enjoy it as well, to be honest. I quite like that kind of level of just finding efficiencies and things and doing that. And it also just allows my teammates to focus on the things they're good at as well. So, Stu's a backup navigator, so he can just kind of focus on supporting Chris. Sophie picks up a few extra roles in the team, just with her sort of skill set as well. But yeah, I guess we just all contribute to that whole that makes up the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a solid team. So then going into the Eco Challenge, you obviously knew that you were you were going to be at the pointy end as you are for every single race. But we're looking around you at the other teams that landed in Fiji. Like, who were you looking at? Of like, right, got my eye on them. We're going to have to make sure that we keep in front of them from the get go.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I don't know if everyone sort of believes me when I say this, but as a team, we actually spend virtually no time really analysing the field or talking much at all about the teams. In fact, I can't even remember one conversation in Fiji where we actually sat down and talked about the other teams in the race. We might talk about people as friends, like, oh, hey, have you seen Mike, or have you seen Aaron, or, someone that we know from around the world. But we don't, I think somewhere along the line, our team has developed this culture where we become very self-focused on getting ourselves through a course as best we can. So on the ground in Fiji, really what we're trying to do is absorb as much information as we can about what the course is going to be like, and then just really figuring out and focusing our energy into how we're going to get through the course as best we can. And, you know, like I, as team captain and sort of the main strategist, like I am aware of the teams that are there. You know, like I know that, you know, this team could be quite good on the water, or these guys could be good on land, or these guys are going to be good on bikes. And then I will often think, yeah, but that team is not going to be good in this, or this is their weakness, this is their strength. So I will do a little bit of, I guess, almost sort of data analysis and go, if any of these teams are going to beat us, how are they going to do it? You know, are they going to outwalk us, out-paddle us, out-navigate us? And generally speaking, most races, there will be no team that I think is going to outrace us. So I kind of think, well, the only way we're going to get beaten is if we do some really dumb things that lose us the race. So we have to be mindful about doing that, or we have some bad luck, which, you know, other teams sometimes have.
Yeah.
You know,
and it can always happen over 7 days of racing,
yeah,
like
that's right.
Either doing dumb things or having bad luck. And actually that takes us to the very start of the race. So you kick off, there's 66 teams that set off on outriggers. You're kind of like, it would look like you're in the middle of the pack going out in the outrigger. And then there's always, I mean, I don't know whether it needs to be dramatized for TV a little bit, but there's one boat which flipped. In fact, I think there's a couple of boats that flipped early on. One of which was was Team New Zealand. And there's you guys bobbing about in the water. And what the hell happened? And what was going through your mind then?
So I guess you're not going to believe me if I say we did it on purpose because we were hot. We wanted to have a swim.
You just wanted to, like, I bet you got paid a bit extra by Mark Burnett just to, like, okay, let's make this exciting.
We said, this is the only way we're going to get on TV, guys. Let's wait for the camera to be on us and we'll flip it over. So what happened was that, well, first of all, the boats were lined up in numerical order. Oh, no, sorry, they weren't. They weren't lined up in numerical order. As a registration, they had a kind of a jackpot where you basically chose a number and they didn't tell you what the significance of the number was. So turns out we were the last team to register. We flew in late. All of us decided to train at home for as long as we could and just get the last flight into Fiji. So we turned up. We were the last team to arrive. So we just got given a number. We didn't get to choose one. It turned out that number was essentially pole position of where you started on the Billy rafting. So if you chose number 1, you were basically the furthest downstream, and if you chose number 66, you were furthest upstream. I think we were number 61 or 62, so we were basically one of the last teams up the river. So our first sort of challenge was to sort of navigate through all the carnage and all the boats and things. So and we're also really mindful of just looking after the boat. You know, we're kind of like, far out, these things are not super strong. Last thing we actually want is someone to crash into us and damage our boat. The other thing was that, and this is, this was the same for all teams, but we didn't actually get to paddle those boats before the race. So it turns out that they were way tippier than what I expected. Like, I've spent quite a lot of time paddling normal outrigger canoes, but these things were really quite tippy. And when we had the race briefing, the briefing about how to use the boats, one of the guides had told us it'd be worthwhile strapping your packs to the outrigger, to the armour, just to put a bit more weight on the outrigger. But I was kind of thinking, oh no, you know, the boat can't be that unstable. We'll be right. We'll just chuck our boats and we'll just chuck our packs in the boat. Well, yeah, it turns out they are real tippy. And I think what happened when we tipped over is that Stu, we were trying to just avoid a collision, just change our angle. It looked like we were going to collide with another couple of boats. And I was steering from the back and Stu was steering from the front. And I think both of us, just the force of both of us steering was just enough to flip the boat over. And it went super fast. So after that, we were like, oh okay. We didn't have any problems after that, but it was just like, now we know how tippy this boat is. We need to be a bit more sensible. But it was all right. I mean, I was just glad we didn't lose any gear. That was the main thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you managed to sort of get through the field pretty well, though. After that point, right? You flipped it and managed to sort of navigate through the through all of the other boats and get towards the because that initial outrigger was there was a good 20. Yeah, what was the distance of it? Do you remember?
No, I don't. I think it was probably 20, 25 k's out to the island or something. Maybe. Yeah, maybe more. I can't remember, but yeah, we just paddled. Like we were just kind of like early days of the race. We also felt that it was almost inevitable that we were going to get hit by some dark zones early in the race. So we kind of figured that you don't need to be leading this race. You just need to be near the front. You don't want to be in a situation where teams in front of you get through a dark zone and you get stopped. So we kind of felt, well, we need to get back towards the front of the race, but we don't need to be leading. But as it turned out, a combination of just our paddling power and Chris's navigation, we actually ended up pretty close to the front quite quick because we just took a shorter line when we exited into the open ocean. So there was the team that came in first off the outriggers. I think it was Bend Racing. It was an American team. Yeah,
they had a big old dude, which obviously is a good paddler, but fuck me, did he burn himself out? Like watching the show there, like they literally he must be about 16 to 18 stone, and they had to like drag him through the next part of the course. That was I'm actually like impressed how he came back from that, but that was classic sort of burnout early in a race, like the testosterone at the beginning at the start line and pushing too hard. So what was your strategy going in? I mean, like, were you thinking of like not pacing too fast to begin with? Just what was the kind of plan and strategy? You talked about the dark zone. What was your sleep strategy going into it and from the beginning?
Well, for memory, we had a compulsory sleep card. I think we had to have, that was a weird number. I think it was 11 hours of mandatory sleep or something like that. I can't remember, but we did have to take mandatory sleep. And you could only take that at certain places. So we knew we were going to get some sleep, but we didn't really know how long the race was going to be because they only gave us stages to the next camp. So, we didn't really know. Obviously they gave us some idea of the distance, but that doesn't really help us that much when we're sort of strategizing.
Because normally really at the beginning of expedition race, they give you the maps for the entire course, right? And you plan out the entire course. But in this one, they actually only gave you till because there was like 4 camps in total. It was just purely for the next stage to the next camp. Interesting. Okay.
That's right. It's pretty much just a day at a time, really. And like fast forwarding through that, like essentially going into the last camp. I mean, we didn't know that was the last camp, or we may have had some idea that it might have been, but after leaving the last camp, we still didn't know if we had 1, 2, or even 3 days of racing to go. So our philosophy was really, and I'd raced in Fiji before, so I kind of knew what to expect more so than my teammates. But our philosophy was really just to look after ourselves and not get sick, not get injured, not get heat stroke, not get dehydrated, and just basically stay near the front of the race. And once we actually know where the finish line is, then figure out how we're going to cross it first. So we were really just kind of doing our own thing for most of the race, sleeping when it suited us and just going at a speed that was comfortable for us, not pushing anyone too hard. And then just ticking off the Ks really, just so until we actually knew what was going on. And as it transpired, we just found ourselves each day just pulling away from the field really, without that being a goal. We're very much just like, we'll go at our speed, and if other people want to go faster than us, then that's, good luck to them sort of thing. But as it turned out, we spent most of the race on our own.
Yeah, there was a bit that you see in the show where you did have a slight nav error. I didn't know whether actually Chris was looking to do sort of a bit of a shortcut, but you seem to. I think that was on like one of the first main treks.
Yeah.
Were there many other nav errors, and what happened there?
Yeah, it wasn't so much an error. It was just some quite ambiguous course instructions. So the course instructions said something to the effect of, go upstream, up the canyon, retrieve the medallion, and then, sort of 50 meters up from the medallion, look for a trail that will take you towards, towards the billies or something. So we kind of looked around. We went up and down the riverbed a few times. But we just couldn't find the trail, and there's no one around. There was a cameraman following us, but that there's no staff or there's no. So in the end, we're just going, well, how much time do we waste looking for this trail? Or do we just do our own thing? And I think for us, we're so used to just doing our own thing. We're just like, well, it's not that far. We might as well let's just boost over. And it actually turned out to be more of a shit fight than we hoped. But it was. I think we did lose some time, but no one was worried about it, And it was a team decision. It was it was just a bit of a weird thing. But after that, no, I don't. I'm not aware that Chris had any issues with navigation. There was one on one other trek, probably the last big trek. Similar thing. Just at night time, we just got into an area where there was a lot more trails. The course instructions were a little bit ambiguous, and we probably lost an hour, I think, just trying to find the right trail. I suspect other teams behind us had that same problem, so it was probably leveled out, I think.
Yeah, there's a bit in the show where you say, when we're finding it hard, or when you finding it hard, that all of the other teams are going to be finding it hard at that point as well. And what were those points in the race? What were the points that you were really like in the pain cave, knowing that like, whoa, this is full on?
I think from memory, the only time where I really sort of thought, oh man, this is very, very unpleasant, was swimming in the lakes in the interior up in the high mountain there.
Once you scaled the waterfalls.
Yeah, it was just so cold, and just your body's run down as it is. And we did take some stuff to stay warmer, but we should have taken more really if we wanted to just make the whole experience a bit more pleasurable. But
what was the stuff you took to be warmer? Did you have like the merino on, or?
No, we took some neoprene. We had neoprene long tops and stuff on just next to our skin, which made a big difference. Sophie didn't have one, I don't think. She either forgot or decided she was tough enough not to need one. But
which she was.
I had said to the team that we did a similar thing in Eco in 2002. It turns out it was exactly the same thing. But I was suggesting that we take some inflatable mattresses, for swimming in the interior lakes and things. But, at the time when you're in the transition area and, you're loading your pack up and you think, oh, do I really need this? And the other thing is when you're down low, it's so hot. It's almost inconceivable to think that you actually could be cold. And the other thing is that we, as a team, we actually decided to do the rope section at night. So we basically did the math and thought we're going to be swimming in the daytime. So it might actually be quite nice. It was actually real cold.
And it was still freezing it. That section appeared to like break most of the teams. Like watching it back, it just looks so harrowing. A couple of people getting hypothermic, and I think like was how were your team feeling when they got off the back and the hike out of those lakes? Was it? I'm sure you were happy to get that cup of coffee at the end.
Yeah, that was great. No, we're pretty good. I think we're all good, or we all know how important it is to stay positive and how much your mindset can actually control the outcome of those environments. Like, I think if you sort of mentally succumb to those conditions, you will get spanked by them. I've only seen the first 2 episodes of the show, but I have seen some of the trailers, and I noticed in one of the trailers, Sophie's actually making some joke about going for a morning swim, and and that kind of sums it up really. Like, even in the face of the adversity and the challenge of those races, you can expect one of my teammates to be taking the piss and making a joke about it. And I think that's a coping mechanism. If you can't laugh about it, then you kind of know that the challenge has beaten you. And I think for that reason, we get through those things fairly unscathed,
Yeah. There's one thing I notice about you, like in just whenever they catch you, it's normally at sort of a transition station, or it's more towards it. And you seem to be always grazing, always eating food, or at some point it's just all on the move, eating. Like, is it just so happens that you always eat just when you're going into a transition area, or you just literally always eating when you're out on the course?
No, not always eating. I bloody hope not. But I think, I guess we are. And, obviously not always eating, but I think we are always grazing. And, for me, the way I work my nutrition in a race is pretty much hourly intakes of food. So I pretty much look at my watch, and on the hour, I'm going, well, I need to be eating something, whether it be a handful of nuts or, a gel or some fruit or a sandwich or a freeze-dry meal or whatever it is I feel like, maybe some cookies or lollies or whatever. But it's about keeping the energy going in. Obviously, we're burning so many calories that, we keep fueling it in. And I'm of the belief, and I think my team are the same, that, you do need to train yourself to eat and drink before your body's telling you to eat and drink, in order to kind of have that sustained energy level. If you're kind of just running yourself into the ground and go, I should eat some food, get my energy back, I don't think you race as well. So I guess we just keep the tank topped up, keep it as close to full as possible.
Yeah, and it's also just noticeable the way, like, you're just doing it on the move. You're not stopping to eat or stopping to do something. And look, if that's kind of how you seem to be just maintaining the speed at all times. Even when you're in a transition point and someone's trying to interview you, you're doing something while you're interviewing. You're multitasking constantly. I think there's nothing more fucking annoying when you're doing those sort of races and you've got someone that's flapping around, which is quite easily to do when you've not slept for 4 or 5 days, and you're spend 10 minutes trying to get your bike wheel in or something. It's so important just to be really quick in those transition points, right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think at certain times of a stage, my philosophy on that is at certain times of a stage, not always, but you can have a teammate who's really working hard and hurting a bit and suffering and may need a bit of help, and they're working really hard for the team to save sometimes only just a few minutes. So it's kind of a blatant sort of disrespect, in my view, to then go into transition and just start wasting a whole lot of time when your teammate has kind of just basically visited their sort of deathbed to save time. And then you have someone who wants to kind of, wash their feet and, I don't know, do something fairly unnecessary in the, washing feet's actually probably a good thing to do, but you know what I mean? It's I think if you're going to be super efficient and be committed to saving minutes, you can't go wasting them. Otherwise, everything's in vain, really. And
you talk about feet, and actually, I asked Paddy, my teammate, I was like, what, any questions you got for Nathan? And he's like, what's the feet strategy? How do you, and actually in the show, you see that a Japanese team, 2 of the team members get trench foot and have to be helicoptered off the side of the waterfall. What do you, when you get hot spots, I know you're a fast moving team, but do you say, okay, we can stop, sort your feet out, and what's your plan there?
Yeah, I think for us, we are very disciplined at preventative, managing our feet preventatively. So a lot of it is that if something doesn't feel right, even if it's in the first 10 minutes of the race, stop and sort it out now, because we know it's just not worth pushing on, because we all know that foot-related problems, 10 minutes now could save days at the other end of the race, or could be the difference between finishing and not finishing. But I think, in all honesty, foot care really comes down to conditioning. And if you want to go into an adventure race and have minimal problems with your feet, you need to be going out and doing the things in training that you're going to expect to be doing in the race. And often that is long treks with wet feet. And if you're not doing that in training, then your body's got no chance of surviving that in a race. And I think we do very well as a team with foot problems in races, meaning we don't have many or almost none, because we all spend enough time out in the New Zealand outdoors with big packs on our backs with wet socks and wet feet all day long. And your body just you just condition yourself to it.
Your feet toughen up to it. Is there any other sort of, do you get the Sudocrem on there, or Gurney Goo? Any like recommendations of preventative stuff that you can do other than just training hard? Just
nothing, no secret sort of stuff. Just, we just hit it with, just antifungal and antibacterial products and just keep applying those during the race, like anti-friction sort of creams and things, and to be honest, to a certain degree, then we just hope for the best, because I've done races before where we've done all those things and still had foot problems. So I don't know. I think sometimes you can be a bit unlucky, I think.
Yeah, I think like right footwear as well is also important. I think like there's nothing worse than like doing a hiker bike when you're when you've got your cleats, when you've got your like mountain biking shoes, and you've got a 50k hiker bike over rocks with but that was Reunion Island for you, wasn't it, back in there? One other question I had about Eco Challenge was just around the rules of the race, because it seems slightly different from your usual expedition adventure race in terms of you were allowed to actually get locals to carry your packs. You're allowed like porters at one point, and also like you had you were able to have someone at the transition points at the main camps to be able to, like a support crew there as well. Were there any other things that were drastically different from the normal adventure race?
Not drastically different. To answer those questions, yes, the Eco Challenge this year did have a support person, the team's assistant crew, they called it. And I guess that's not, new to adventure racing. That used to be the normal, and then they went away. They essentially went to unsupported races. Eco decided to come back. It is good, I think. I mean, it helps the organisation, just having one person that is sort of overseeing, each team. And so that worked really well. A friend of mine, Mark, came with us to Fiji. He did an awesome job for us. My understanding with support from locals was it was only allowed between a couple of checkpoints. So there was basically one section of river trail that we went down where between two checkpoints, they basically said, if you want to get porters, guides, people to carry your gear, if you can get a bike or a horse, it's kind of fair game. And I think this came about because in Fiji 2002, it got a bit out of control, the teams using locals, and teams being guided, and teams, on horseback, and just basically getting help. And our team didn't receive any help, I must admit. And I think going into this year's race, rather than trying to figure out how they could potentially control that or mitigate that in a section where we were going to basically be passing through lots of villages, they must have just decided that, well, let's just make it fair game. If rather than a few teams kind of doing something that is essentially might be against the rules, let's just make it a free-for-all and let everyone basically do what they can. And it wasn't for that much part. It was only about 20k, I think. So my understanding was outside of that time, you weren't allowed support from the locals.
The good thing with that is it just showed the interactions with the local Fijians, who just seemed amazing, and it just gave that extra element of it, of being able to it feel like you were part of the local environment and be able to interact with them. You did get help at one point though, mate. And yeah, moving towards like the end of the race, back on the you get to the last bit, which is an ocean paddle on the outrigger.
Yes.
Pretty much like the last 20 or 30k. And it's almost like bookending the race with a bit of dramatic effect. I think Mark Burnett was slipping you some dollars there again. But yeah, what happened on the last part of the race?
Well, I haven't seen that part of the show yet, obviously, but the short answer is our boat fell apart. And I mean, that's just one of those things. So yeah, I guess it was just, I mean, the reality is that the boats weren't in very good condition, the outriggers that we had to choose from. And I don't know if we were the only ones that actually had a boat come apart, but I'm sure there were teams that had some problems with the outriggers, maybe leaking or things inside the boat breaking or whatever. But that aside, I was surprised, and I've said this before, post the race, like the Kamakau canoes, like they basically built like 66 brand new sailing canoes, and the stand-up paddleboards, they were brand new. Everyone got a brand new stand-up paddleboard, and the rafts we had were amazing condition rafts. So getting close to the outrigger section, I was getting really excited that we're going to be paddling some super duper, 4-person outrigger racing canoe that's probably been shipped down from Hawaii. This is probably going to be the best outrigger canoe I've paddled in my life. And we finished that stage and we walk into a paddock and look at the canoes. I was just like, oh my God, it was like a freaking outrigger canoe graveyard. And there was just all these boats. And it was bizarre because the whole race up until that point had been this massive Amazon budget with, chains of helicopters flying around and helicopters filming helicopters, and it was just off the charts. And then I go, choose your boat, and it's like, are you joking? It's like, so I wandered around for a bit and chose what I thought was the best boat there because we were the first team. But yeah, obviously I chose the wrong boat because literally at night it just fell apart out at sea. I mean, it was a rough sea. We were out there and we were hit by a storm, so we got pretty intense wind and waves, for an hour or two. And I think it just put stress under that boat that, up until then, that boat was probably only ever paddled in flat water. So, yeah, so it's a bit of a bummer. We end up probably losing, I don't know, I heard afterwards that we lost about 5 hours of forward moving on course. The organisation did bring us another outrigger canoe out, but it just took them hours and hours to get a boat out to us. And when they eventually got it to us, they actually had us, we were in the safety boat at that point, and they actually had us go back down the course the way we'd already come. So we ended up having to paddle water that we'd already paddled before. So yeah, it wasn't a fun night. It was, no.
I bet. And once again, bobbing around in the water in a storm. And yeah, like I heard, that's the most dramatic part of the show, like with Mayday, and you guys getting pulled up. But like, it was good that they still allowed you to finish, because actually, like, if you ask for help in a lot of races, that's you're out basically, right? If you ask for support. But given it was down to the dodgy boats that they had supplied you, I'm glad they sort of they allowed you to finish the race and supplied you with another canoe.
Yeah, that's right. I think yeah, I mean, ultimately it's up to them what they chose to do, Eco. But my expectation would certainly be that, for the event, if they're supplying you equipment and the equipment they supply you fails, then they have to take some ownership for that. I think It's totally fine if we turn up with crap bikes that we haven't maintained and they fail, then it's like, well, that's your fault. You brought that bike. But when you don't have any choice about the equipment you're using, no, I think the organisation have to, because I would never have turned up to a race with a boat in that condition, so yeah. No, I think that it's fair, but and there was a natural penalty anyway. Like that essentially could have lost us the race. We were just lucky enough that we had enough lead at that point that we managed to do all that and still get across the finish line. But it could have been different. If had the other teams been closer, then that would have been their race.
Yeah, well, I think you still managed to have a few hours on the Canadians and then the other Kiwi team. But yeah, well, like incredible performance. You mentioned you've watched back a couple of the shows, but there's been I mean, I've just absolutely loved watching it. I like binged it in 2 days, and it was just incredible. And I think. Yeah, there's been some sort of like mixed feedback. I think when everyone knows someone that's in the race, and I'd interviewed Bern Dornham last year, and she was in the Thunderbolt AR team, and they had a great story as well, like the twins, her and Liz, and like I was expecting them to sort of to feature quite a lot, and it's always a bit disappointing when you don't see someone being sort of like featured in the content. But there's 66 teams, right? They can't cover every team, and it's often the way that they'll do the very pointy end, and then the real stories of struggle and suffering are at the people that are bringing up the rear. So you've got to understand that they're going to sort of spend most of their time covering those teams.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I have seen, some of the comments that, on the World's Toughest Race Facebook group or whatever it is. And yeah, I understand where some of the people are coming from. Like they raced well and they were up there and they didn't sort of get any coverage. But I think you just have to step back and look at the bigger picture of this event. And if you sort of said that Eco Challenge was purely a race and that their aim was to make a 10-hour documentary of an adventure race, then you'd start watching those series and go, well, they've probably failed at this, because they're not actually focusing on the race that much. But if you sort of step back and said they're going to make a 10-hour documentary of an adventure race, but they're going to look for as many kind of human interest stories as possible and engage an audience that is actually not interested in adventure racing per se, because they've probably never heard of adventure racing before until they actually tune into the show, then I think that's where they succeed in hitting that audience. And, we were pretty lucky. Like, all the teams were paid to be there. So, all the teams would have profited from being at the race. So you're essentially sort of giving up that right to, no one had to have sponsors, and you're sort of giving away those rights for them. I mean, they put on a race. We all went and had an awesome race, an awesome adventure. And then it's up to them really how they want to use that footage to grow the sport and to grow the show, and ultimately to make it happen again. So in order for us to go out and do another Eco Challenge, if it means that they run a show that focuses on teams that are down the back of the pack or coming last or whatever it is, I personally don't have any problem with that. And I think I've been around the sport long enough to know that the downstream effects of eco ripple out, and that's where the benefits come. And my personal example of that is that I was sponsored by Seagate for a long time. I mean, Seagate would be probably the biggest sponsorship there's probably ever been in adventure racing, period. And that sponsorship pretty much moved into Team Avaya. It was essentially just a bit of a transfer within a corporate, but essentially we've had a corporate sponsor for 20 years. Well, Seagate only got interested in adventure racing because of Eco Challenge. I mean, it was a couple of the executives saw Eco Challenge on TV and said, we need to get a team in this race. And then that grew to quite a few of the Seagate executives actually wanting to do adventure racing themselves. But, without Eco Challenge, we wouldn't have had Seagate sponsorship. And that's been huge for Kiwi adventure racing and many other things. So I just think, yeah, sure, I understand people are disappointed they didn't get coverage they perhaps hoped for on the show. But, yeah, I just don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. The main thing is that the show, attracts a much
and
bigger
reaches
audience.
A wider audience. Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I mean, I've only really got into adventure racing properly in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, and And for me, it's the purest form of endurance sports. And I think that that it needs to have a resurgence, and this could definitely be the catalyst to be able to do that. I mean, I hope that it just gets it just sort of captures the wider audience, so that, because I mean, mate, no offense, but you're getting on a bit, right? We need we need new blood to come into the sport, right? And so yeah, what do you think is going to be like the future of the sport?
Well, already, I mean, I've just seen, I've actually had a lot of people emailing me and messaging me since I've been watching the show, asking, how do I get into the sport? Where do I start? You know, what is the thing? And, you know, these are people that are obviously super excited, but don't actually know that there's all these layers of the sport that already exist. So all they need is to be directed to, you know, go and join this club, go and do this race, go and get these skills. And this is happening, I think, in quite a few bubbles around the world right now, that people are coming in contact with the show and getting really inspired and want to be part of it. And so I think the next step is just making sure that you know, in the different areas around the world where this energy is that those people are being welcomed and being directed and encouraged to sort of take part. And I'm sure they are, because the whole event racing community is a sort of welcoming group of people. And then I think, you know, there'll just be stuff that'll just happen as a result of that. I don't think kind of sending negative stuff to the production team about, you know, they've done it all wrong is that helpful. Especially if you want to do eco again, it's probably the best way to get yourself crossed off the list. But I mean, everyone's welcome to their view, but I just hope that people can just see beyond, you know, the kind of the short term sort of stuff to the bigger picture stuff. And I think probably even bigger than us just welcoming all these people, new people into the sport that has all of a sudden sort of become, I guess, in contact with it. I do think the sport at some stage in the future does have to probably start being a little bit more grown up about how it's managed. And, you know, I think if you look at any sport that's kind of managed, you know, essentially professionally,
commercially,
yeah, you're starting to sort of talk about, you know, federations and you know, organised governing bodies and getting sort of countries working together a bit more. I guess I'm just, my main view of it is obviously from in New Zealand, and we're doing amazing things in New Zealand, but we're not actually recognised by the government as an official sport. And because of that, we can't get any funding from the government. None of our teams at adventure racing at whatever level can be nominated for sort of sports awards, team of the year, any of that stuff. Because, you know, there's a lot of, the sport is not, you know, it's not, when we go to the world champs, it's not an official world champs, you know, per se. It's essentially a commercial kind of enterprise that's named the world champs. So I think all that's great. I think it's all part of a developing sport. But at some point, I think it needs to go, right, the sport's been around now for 20 years. We've got major events. We've got these teams. We've got all these things happening. We actually need to bring all these things together and get this sort of stamp of approval and say, right, event racing is an official sport. This is the, you know, this is your governing body. I mean, I guess cycling, I came from cycling before I was an event racer, and, you know, UCI are the governing body of sport. And under UCI, you know, there's mountain biking, cyclocross, track, road, BMX. There's all the components of cycling, but they all come under one umbrella organisation. And I think, you know, I'd like to think that at some point in the future, event racing will have that, and that'll just help tie everything together.
Well, I can't think of a better ambassador once you've like hung up your racing boots to take on that responsibility, Nathan.
Oh, no.
I think you've just nominated yourself for the global, but mate, you're like you. I mean, my race buddy Paddy is like he's past the half century. It's coming up soon for you. there's still plenty of racing in the legs there. What's in the future for you personally as it comes to racing?
Oh yeah, as you probably know, I've tried to retire a few times. I sort of struggled, but yeah, I'm getting on. I mean, I'll be 49 next year, and my body's still doing all right, but I don't have the speed and strength I used to, and that's just the truth. And I'm okay with that. Life kind of goes on.
I'm sorry, I laugh because you still absolutely smash it. But I suppose you just look you look around at your teammates like Sophie, Stu, and Chris, and go, oh bloody hell, I'm struggling to keep up with these dudes now. Yeah,
that's right. And the other thing is that I have no qualms admitting that there's 10, probably 20 guys in New Zealand that are faster and stronger than me that could slip into that team and pick it up a gear. Now, on saying that, I do know in a race like Eco Challenge, that's quite a technical race. I bring a whole lot of skills and experience that those other guys wouldn't bring. But there does come a point for my teammates where, the pros cons of having the old guy start to kind of get less. And at some point, we need to have that discussion whether I officially just kind of break myself away and say, look, I'm refusing to race for you guys for your own benefit, or they actually, collaborate and get their shit together and say, you're not actually racing with us anymore. Sorry, mate. Which I won't have any problem with.
I can't see that. I can't see that happening. Well, Nathan, mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. Like I could like chat to you for hours, and I would love to get you back on the podcast again soon. Good luck for organising the spring race. Fingers crossed it goes ahead, mate. Like hopefully New Zealand will come out of lockdown again soon. It seems to be pretty well under control, but. Really congrats on an amazing eco challenge. Hopefully we'll see you in next year's edition as well, but plenty more racing in those legs yet, I think, mate.
Totally. Thanks, Scott, and thanks for taking the time. I mean, people like yourself who are doing podcasts and putting energy back into the sport, I mean, that all adds up to the whole. So it's great to have people contributing as you are and helping out and being passionate about it. So no, I really appreciate that as well. And hopefully, people enjoy listening to our chat.
Well, yeah, we've got lots of we have lots of ultra racers, ultra runners on the and mountain bikers and stuff. Hopefully, they decide to sort of pull their energy towards adventure racing, and this inspires a few more people to get to a start line and hopefully see you at one soon. So, nice one, Nathan. Absolute pleasure, sir. Thank you.
The Endurance Asia podcast.
And always tell a truthful story if they ever ask. Stop the complaining, cause things ain't that bad.